Hello, can you? Okay, great. What's the number? Los números en inglés. 2, 3. Good afternoon. So this is the flexibility of Latin America. We need to organize very quickly in some other way, and we could do it with the cooperation of all of us. I would like to thank you, and I'm sorry because we had to change everything, but I always thought that this is a way of working and we would have a bigger room, but well. I imagine that the value of this session is to be able to know together what we're doing in our different organizations and our different entities in terms of energy, of course. And that is to get to know as a consequence, and that is what I wanted to say. We would like to begin with a conversation, and I know this is a challenge, and I know it's going to be complicated, but getting to know you in a first round and getting to know also what are the lines of work you are working with right now. I know this is a challenge, but either way, the idea is from that point on, we can advance with a second phase of this dialogue, trying to find spaces of collaboration among our entities, thinking about the common points we're going to find. And thus, what I wanted to say to begin with is just to have this round of introductions so we can get to know each other from the personal point of view, but also from the organizational point of view. What is the organization you are working with or you are representing today? And the idea is to have this first perspective of these topics and the main axis that I think we're going to get in all of our organizations. I'm going to give the floor here to Irena. Gracias. Yo hablo mejor hindi que español, entonces voy a hablar en inglés. Yo soy Binu Partan. Yo soy el director adjunto por el involucramiento de los países y también en una parte muy importante del mundo, en América Latina. Irena ha evolucionado de una agencia que solamente se enfocaba en energía renovable a la transición energética y todos los pedidos de los miembros. Somos el marco en el cual priorizamos nuestras acciones con un punto de vista de la parte renovable. Queremos ver cuán cómodos están los miembros en cuanto a las demandas energéticas y ver cuánto podemos trabajar con las tecnologías de transición energética, incluyendo la parte renovable y todos los roles que podemos asumir. Somos digamos, como un club de transición energética. Tenemos nuestras publicaciones en las cuales también publicamos todas las previsiones para América Central, etcétera. Y lo que queremos hacer como una agencia a nivel de país es que tenemos un número de líneas de servicios para trabajar con para poder trabajar con políticas, sobre todo en el trabajo analítico, socioeconómico. Y lo que vamos a hacer esta semana va a ser parte de nuestro enfoque de 360 grados, donde vamos a usar nuestro trabajo analítico para poder tener una inversión a nivel de país. Y esperamos que esta experiencia, incluyendo la región de América Latina, nos pueda ayudar a ser más activos en cuanto a todo lo que tiene que ver con el campo. En América Latina podemos ver que hay una gran importancia para Irena. Nosotros hemos avanzado mucho en cuanto a la transición energética, pero vemos que hay muchas oportunidades, sobre todo para escalar acciones en el tiempo corto que tenemos y también realizar diferentes cosas para pensar cómo podemos continuar con esta energía y su transición en los próximos meses. Gracias. Disculpen por mi larga presentación. Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Natasha Matzo. Yo represento el grupo BID. Simplemente quería decirles que este grupo está compuesto por BID Invest, que es la parte privada, y también Love, que también tiene proyectos de menor escala. En la parte de energía nosotros hemos evolucionado de ser una división muy tradicional en cuanto a la transmisión, generación, y también llegamos a ser lo que yo les diría que se llama ahora la tecnología, almacenamiento, hidrógeno. Entonces estamos muy enfocados en la parte de los proyectos tradicionales, pero también estas nuevas maneras de trabajo que tienen que ver con la transición energética, también género. También estamos inclinados y queremos cerrar esa brecha de género, y nosotros tenemos una historia de más de 30 años de transición energética. Hemos trabajado con CIPAC en América Central y CIESUR también, que es el Cono Sur, y otros países como CINEA y Arco Norte. El BID es el banco que ha trabajado con esto desde hace 20 años. Yo he trabajado también como directora y en la parte de inversiones privadas y públicas. Nosotros tenemos una agenda de conocimiento que es muy fuerte. Creo que muchas de las cosas que hacemos en cuanto a los hubs de conocimiento harán que reduzcamos los esfuerzos en cuanto al análisis de los países para que puedan entonces llegar a sus metas tal como se las han propuesto. Hola, soy Branca Carpinelli y yo vengo de la Agencia Atómica Internacional de Viena. Es una agencia especializada de las Naciones Unidas. Soy una coordinadora de esta parte y nosotros lo que estamos haciendo en la región, simplemente para ser muy breve porque esta es una ronda de presentaciones y es parte de la discusión. Nosotros en cuanto a la energía estamos ayudando a nuestros Estados miembros que tienen poder nuclear o energía nuclear para tener los mejores estándares requeridos, como Argentina, México, Brasil, pero también los países que se consideran como potencias nucleares. También trabajamos en la planificación nuclear con las herramientas de modelado para que sean lo más eficientes posibles en cuanto a su planificación nuclear y para que diversifiquen sus matrices energéticas. I'm Cristina Novillo. I am the Director of International Relations of the European Commission in the General Director of Energy. And regarding my presentation and introduction, actually what I would like to say is what the European Union is doing in the process of energy transition and also reaching the goal of climate neutrality for 2050. This is not an easy process. We always talk about not a dilemma, but a trilemma, so to say, because we have the safety regarding supply in 27 countries where fossil fuels are still being an important part of the energy mix. And the second pillar of this situation would be sustainability and also increasing the percentages of renewable energies and technologies such as the renewable hydrogen, energy efficiency, fuels, and we want to reduce fossil fuels and have clean energies. And we also have a third pillar. These are the reasonable prices. This energy transition has to be beneficial for the citizens. And if it's not done so, we cannot create politics that will also be affordable for the industry and the citizens. These three elements of the problem would be fundamental for us. In the European Union, we have this vocation at international level that is very important. And in energy terms, I would say that in the last months from the invasion of Ukraine, we have been working more intensively. We work with the whole world, and we are also working very intensively in the last year with Latin America and the prices in Latin America and the Caribbean. You already know the ECLAC meeting we had in Brussels, and this has been a great impulse to go and foster the relations among the European countries and also Latin America, and we think this is a very important vector to be able to intensify and to cooperate in this energy transition that is unstoppable and that will be beneficial for all.
Bueno, Fernando Brañé, soy ejecutivo.
I work at the Physical Infrastructure Directorate. I have more than 13 years of experience, and basically CAF, as a multilateral bank in the region, has been working in the issues that my colleagues from IDB have mentioned, and also my colleagues from the European Union. The topics that are connected to transmission and distribution, we should never forget about this, because for us it's very important, because all these new technologies, wind, solar, they tend to be very attractive, but we need to insist on transmission and distribution and all those aspects of their digitalization. Gender topics are also very relevant within the organization. The bank, the aim of the bank is that the whole portfolio for 2026 should be 40% green. So we have a series of activities, but they are closely related to the needs of each of our countries. And I would like to highlight that our exchanges with the countries is permanent, and what we offer is basically what they request. In general terms, we are agnostic from the technology standpoint, given that technology helps us to reduce emissions of GHGs. This is just the beginning. We can continue talking later. I'm Fernando Matoni. I'm part of an association of electricians in Uruguay that is called AUTE, because this is including the technicians, and we play a fundamental role for this change in the energy mix, because we technicians and electricians, we have direct contact with the customers and they trust us, and we can show them that basically changes take place not only through public and private organizations, but also the visible components, that is the electrician, the engineer, okay, or female electricians. We have a lot of women working as electricians and engineers, and we also include teachers, schools, and we reach the whole country. Together we can work to make this change possible. And communications and these kind of meetings tend to accelerate processes. I'm Rayen Quiroga. I'm the Chief of Water and Energy at ICLAC. ICLAC is the regional body of the United Nations for Latin America and the Caribbean, and we work with 33 countries. And our work at ICLAC has 4 different components, basically based on energy, its connection with water and infrastructure, as our colleague from CAF mentioned. First, we have actions to build capabilities and to strengthen capabilities in 2 different ways: courses, workshops, and also technical assistance in situ. Also, of course, always responding to the requirements and the request of the countries. Second area would be to work with indicators, metrics, and figures, because we have our own analysis and recommendations based on data. Also, we include economic, social, and environmental variables and demographics also in all our analysis. We produce this data except energy data that are taken from OLADE. They have very good data that are available. So we build this evidence and we make it available in our different databases. And we have different observatories. Also, we have one for renewable energy, and we are building a water observatory. The third area, we promote dialogue of regional policies. Basically, we work with ministers, civil society, different stakeholders, the private sector, the banking system, and we promote exchanges between them. So they talk about energy transition and the most important aspects that we believe should be covered, especially investment funding. That is the most difficult thing to deal with. And then we produce public policies recommendations for decision makers. And for energy transition also, we basically depend on you, that you are our constant colleagues. We work together. We work with CAF, IDB, IEA. Then the most important thing, there is the gap of investment and funding that we have to accelerate energy transition, taking into account the crisis in the region. And we have seen a growth of 0.8 annually. That is less than half of what we used to grow in the decade of the 80s. That increases poverty, unemployment, and those restraints on economy represents a very important challenge, but also a great opportunity, so that this new energy may be the new development engine for our region in terms of the creation of new industries, clusters, added value, and productive transformation. Why? Because energy is involved in all the economic activities and daily activities. Thank you. I'm Alejandra Bernal. I'm the officer for Latin America of the IEA. We are an international organization that works for the OECD based in Paris. And for Latin America, we only have Mexico as one of the members. It was a limiting component when dealing with the region, and in 2015, the agency wanted really to behave as an international agency, and we decided to start an internationalization plan and started working with other regions and not so focused on Europe. So we widened our scope with Latin America, like Colombia and Chile. They now have access to the agency. These are OECD countries, Argentina and Brazil, that are associated to the agency. And we have MOUs with Panama and Uruguay. This is a very special year for the agency, because for the first time we're going to launch an outlook for the region, the Latin American Energy Outlook, for the first time, and that will be exclusively for OLADE at 3:30 p.m. That is an advertisement, by the way. And that was built on strength of the International Energy Agency. That is basically its capacity for data treatment and statistics, and also in the IEA climate change model that allows us to model the different transition paths for the region.
Un poco saltando, pues anticipándome.
And also about the three areas that we need to focus cooperation when talking about energy transition in the region. Those could be statistics, data. To include those in the Latin American outlook, we realize that the region is lagging in these aspects and how information available for policymakers in Latin America and the kind of information they are gathering and that they provide to the IEA and OLADE. There could be not two, but three topics. Also, critical minerals for the energy transition. Energy transitions focused on people, or FAIR, as some countries call it, and also energy efficiency. But I think that we will be able to talk more about this in a couple of minutes. Thank you. I'm Lucia Spinelli. I work for the World Bank. I'm based in the Southern Cone. And after all this, it's difficult to say something different. But from our bank, the vision is similar to Natasha's, from IGB, Fernando, CAF, Cristina. We are working, providing support to countries based on their needs. And the needs, that is a pragmatic approach. So all countries have many needs. We know our strengths and weaknesses. So it's on us to decide which are the most relevant topics depending on the periods and times. Right now, the organization is working on climate issues, energy transition. We can discuss about efficiency, and terms are constantly changing. Sustainable, I think that the agencies, we need to agree on terms to be used. We can reach an agreement on terms, or maybe we can just leave it as it is. It could be more flexible that way. We are providing support in this transition. For me, efficiency is included in that term, but something that is very important that we mention here, we shouldn't forget that these topics are important, but in some realities are at another level. For instance, in some cases we are involved in situations where we need to solve problems from the 80s, from the 2000s, and problems for the transition. We are working with countries that have not solved some of the issues of the 80s and some of the issues of the 2000s. So we should be realistic and consider that situation. So we try to provide support with the transition, but we need to solve some other problems that are older. We're talking about economies of countries that have 20% of loss. So first we need to work on that, to focus on that. Energy efficiency, the same. What I like about these events, that we're all with this Latin American, the Caribbean reality, but it has happened to me that in some cases I was the only person from Latin America. And in Europe, the vision that energy efficiency now is old-fashioned, I thought I would love to be in that position. That is not a reality in our region. I think transition is very important. The fair transition is also important. The bank is working along those lines, but we also provide support to the countries to solve all the other problems that they have from the past. And sometimes we need to, do that exercise of group problems and issues. So first we need to solve the very old problems with a current view, but the problem is the same, I think that the transition allows us to, in a way, group those problems. We need to update regulations, efficiency and loss. That is something very old also, but it's a super relevant approach. Distribution and distributed is something else that we need to take into account. So I think that all these are the topics that we need to focus on.
Hamel, and I am the Secretary General of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. I'm sure you remember, Andres, that when we met in Caracas in July to sign the Memorandum of Understanding, I promised to come to Montevideo and celebrate with you the 50th anniversary of your organization. I would like to convey the best wishes of the GECF. I believe that
Bueno, entonces lo que Oladi ha podido alcanzar en los últimos meses ha funcionado muy bien. Estoy muy feliz de poder colaborar con ustedes y también colaborar con los países de OLADE. Estoy seguro también que nuestro foro de países exportadores de gas podrá trabajar con ustedes de buena manera. Esta es una organización intergubernamental que fue establecida en el año 2001, inicialmente como foro, la plataforma para intercambiar diferentes materiales como el gas, y luego en el 2010 decidimos hacerlo como una organización totalmente internacional con una secretaría que estaba en Doha, en Qatar, y el día de hoy estamos compuestos por 21 países de los 4 continentes. Tenemos países de América Latina, de África, Asia, inclusive Europa. Y estamos expandiéndonos. En los últimos años también entró Mozambique, Italia, los Emiratos Árabes Unidos también entraron este año en la organización, y este es una operación y una organización que se está expandiendo. Nuestra regla es, nuestro papel tiene que ver con un apoyo a los países. Estamos organizados en 3 departamentos técnicos. Uno tiene que ver con las condiciones de mercadeo. Nosotros publicamos un informe mensual de gas en nuestra página web. Y tenemos otro departamento que está trabajando con la resolución de problemas de gas. Nosotros hemos trabajado de manera muy granular, de una manera muy importante. Tenemos más de 136 países que están cubiertos, y también hemos publicado cada año el reporte de visión anual de gas. Y también hemos trabajado con mucha información y datos, además de la cooperación con OLADE y las otras organizaciones, para poder tener la mejor iniciativa, igual que el Foro Internacional de Energía. Nosotros también decidimos expandirnos en nuestra cooperación en cuanto a la tecnología, que nosotros consideramos también que la tecnología es extremadamente importante para poder encontrar soluciones para los desafíos que el mundo está enfrentando en cuanto a energía. Y nosotros hace algunos meses firmamos un acuerdo entre los países sobre un centro de gas que va a estar en Argelia, y también pensamos que habrá diferentes personas que van a estar de acá, que van a contribuir en nuestra inauguración el año que viene. En cuanto a los problemas, nosotros trabajamos principalmente en el contexto, yo diría, de 2 desafíos complejos que estamos enfrentando actualmente, que es cómo asegurar la erradicación de los problemas en cuanto al desarrollo humano, y a la vez proteger el medio ambiente a nivel local, y también en cuanto a la evolución, la calidad y también la innovación en nuestro campo. Nosotros creemos, de hecho, que nosotros tenemos 2 informes que tocan estos 2 puntos importantes. El informe de las Naciones Unidas sobre el desarrollo sustentable y los 140 metas que serían óptimas para alcanzar en el 2040, y la mayoría ni siquiera está en el camino que debería estar. Hay 50, 20 metas que de hecho están por debajo del punto de referencia. También hay otro informe que se publicó hace poco dentro del marco del Acuerdo de París, que nos indica las brechas de implementación importantes en cuanto a la mitigación, adaptación o también la planificación de los recursos para los países en vías de desarrollo y la transferencia de capacidades. Nosotros en el GSF trabajamos en este espectro, y nosotros también hacemos eso para nuestros países miembros, sobre todo porque pensamos que en realidad necesitamos como mundo más energía, pero a la vez el mundo necesita menos emisiones. Ustedes ya saben que tenemos miles de millones de personas en el mundo, y eso también se ve en la visión para el futuro del nivel económico. Vamos a tener obviamente mejor economía, pero también vamos a usar más energía. El escenario es de 22% adicional de energía consumida y claramente no hay un modelo que funcione para todos y tenemos que asegurarnos de balancear la seguridad energética, la igualdad energética y la sustentabilidad energética. No hay dudas de que la eficiencia de la energía renovable es gran parte vital de la solución. Nosotros creemos que el gas natural es una parte importante de esa solución. Hace poco también decidimos expandir nuestro diálogo con los países consumidores. Nosotros desarrollamos el concepto de socio de diálogo, es decir, los países que consumen gas y también un diálogo con las organizaciones y entidades intergubernamentales y con la industria. Eso que se firmó en Pekín en septiembre y nosotros también firmamos un memorando de entendimiento con una de las organizaciones. Nosotros estamos trabajando en estas áreas y tiene que ver con las condiciones del mercado a corto plazo en cuanto a energía y gas. También tenemos la visión a corto y mediano plazo. Trabajamos con la información y cooperamos con muchas organizaciones importantes dentro del marco de Yori. Nosotros también estamos expandiéndonos ahora en el área de tecnología. Claramente el gas natural es el mejor hidrocarburo, pero nosotros queremos hacerlo inclusive mejor, más limpio, inclusive en la quema de gas para reducción de emisiones. También la tecnología está involucrada para poder llegar a cumplir las metas del Acuerdo de París, que tiene que ver con el uso y el almacenamiento de gas. Y hay muchos de los socios que están invirtiendo en esta tecnología. Tenemos un centro de investigación de datos y estamos desarrollando y expandiendo la energía que va a ser clave para encontrar la tecnología y las soluciones dentro del espacio de la tecnología. Y finalmente, creo que esta es la razón por la que estoy acá y estoy muy feliz de estar con ustedes. Y muchas gracias por tu capacidad por adaptarte. Me encantó esta configuración de la sala. Y realmente me encanta estar acá con ustedes y escucharlos. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Sí, eso iba a decir. Sí, quería darle la palabra a Tulio.
Okay, Tulio, please introduce your organization or just 2 or 3 tips of the main topics you're working on. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tulio Machado Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of CIER. I would like to thank you for the opportunity of being here in this event organized by OLADE, all the agencies that are involved in this event. I would like to tell you about my organization. That is an international regional organization. It's a non-profit organization created in 1964. So next year we are turning 60. And our main focus of work is to work for energy integration. But the idea of our founders in 1964 grew, and now energy integration is beyond the physical connection. It's an integration of knowledge, integration of experiences, integration of best practices, and integration of all different ways. Not only physical integration, but beyond that. So we work in different areas. Our main focus, however, is still energy integration between the different countries, the international trade of energy. And we have activities, as my colleague from the World Bank mentioned. We work in energy efficiency, operational efficiency of the different companies. We have annual reports of losses that can be compared between the different companies in Latin America. We are gathering information from 50 different energy distributors in Latin America regarding the quality of the service and losses. We have some reports of operational efficiency, and also we have operations maintenance. So companies cannot be sustainable if they are not managed in the right way, if they are not integrated from the operational standpoint or the financial standpoint. So all these aspects is what we want to do at TIER. We are in 17 Latin American countries, and we have representatives of these countries, and we work with companies for commercialization, distribution, and many other aspects. There are in total 255 companies associated, and that's basically what we do. We work together with OLADE, CAF, the World Bank, ICLAC. We work with all of them, and we want to increase that cooperation. We're also working with IRENA. We're making some progress. I talked to Ricardo Gorin, and now we are going to have a joint study together with IRENA. We want to expand this cooperation with all the agencies. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tulio. For those of you who have just arrived, we wanted to tell you that we are having this seating arrangement. Basically, we found it was the most efficient way of exchanging ideas. We're not actors, right? So we have 45 minutes. So then we can continue with this, but I would like, I know that I'm just the moderator here. I would like to present OLADE, and then after that to talk about some specific points, and also to share our perspective of the Latin American scenario, especially when it comes to challenges and the big trends in the region. Before telling you about OLADE, I really want to thank you for being here in this Energy Week, in this activity. I believe that all these organizations exchanging ideas about energy in Latin America, I think it's a super powerful experience, and I just wanted to highlight that, and thank you for your commitment. I know that this 50th anniversary also helps to gather all these people, but I think it's urgent to discuss these topics. We are an intergovernmental agency. We have 27 countries from Latin America and the Caribbean. As you know, we are a little bit younger than Sierra. Our objective is basically to provide support to countries with their public policies, both in the development, implementation, and assessment of those public policies. And we do that using different tools that our organization has created. We have a training area that is very, very important. I know that the pandemic was in a way positive for us because that helps us to implement these training sessions. We have German cooperation, and they help us with the training sessions. Secondly, and due to this intergovernmental condition and the dialogue that we have with the governments and the Ministry of Energies, so we work with all the ministries of energies, and since we can exchange with all these governments and ministers, we are the ones that gather statistics, information about energy in Latin America. I think that is important to take into account. There is a line of work that we have consolidated and is a main source of information for the work in the region, especially if you want to have an overview of the situation in Latin America from the energy standpoint. I would also say that from its inception, part of our vocation is to promote energy integration in Latin America. In '73, that was defined by energy security. But if we believe that energy integration is a solution to many different aspects, not only security and being competitive, also part of our mission is energy integration. A quick overview on the region then. So one thing that I could say about OLADE's institutionality is basically we are a governance body. We are executive in the way that we have a commission of ministers that gathers tomorrow and a council of experts that met yesterday and today. Basically, we prepare the meeting of the ministers, and these ministers get together once a year. Right now, we are creating technical working groups at country level to promote South-South cooperation. So first of all, ideas that I would like to share with you. And we listen this, ministers and authorities, they mention this. They say that we have energy transition, diversity when it comes to energy resources, but they also mention that there is a significant effort to move on to the second stage of energy transition. We have significant progress in the electric market, and with so much diversity, it's difficult to talk about the region as a whole. But if we focus on main trends, we could say that the main effort is on these second stages of energy transition. That basically what we need to do is to make progress in the most challenging sides. Basically, I'm talking about decarbonization, not only of the electric market, but also the economy in general. And there we have some other challenges. For instance, when we think about transportation and decarbonizing economy as a whole, there we have other agendas that are present in Latin America. One that is cross-cutting to all these areas is green hydrogen, synthetic fuels, low-emission fuels. The whole region in Latin America, or most of it, is starting projects in this topic, and that is an interesting challenge. Some countries have made more progress than others, of course, but we feel there's some kind of debate regarding this last point. When we talk about this hydrogen economy and how much should countries invest in this, we need to pay attention to their contextual needs and think about the energy security agenda. In some countries in Latin America, in these last weeks, they are having issues with electricity supply, for instance. So we have two agendas coexisting. When it comes to integration, Latin American, compared to other integration contexts, when it comes to energy, Latin America has made progress, especially in the electricity markets, and at sub-regional level. What we don't have in Latin America is a regional vision, a regional integration. Electricity market today, it's impossible for us, for one electron to travel around the region. That is impossible. We may, if we implement the Panama project, But we have made progress in different sub-regions in the electricity market. South America has 130 years of history. South America has a history of shared integration. I believe that a fundamental challenge when it comes to integration and infrastructure is not only the electricity components, but try to find regional projects connected to other energy resources. For instance, natural gas, that is an energy source considered to be a transition energy. And it's important to take that into account because from different countries, this is a very important resource, and that has an impact on the development and economic growth of countries. And there are national efforts and not so many integrating efforts, and that is also another challenge that we need to face. Something else when it comes to integration, I believe that the key challenge here is, apart from infrastructure, is to make progress in consistency in the regulatory frameworks that is also connected to integration. And Latin America in that area is running behind. It's difficult for us to find significant political solutions to work in the harmonization of regulatory context. From OLADE, we are trying to promote that and to push that agenda in different areas. Regional certification of green hydrogen, and those topics connected to that. We are working with some of you. Lastly, someone mentioned this, in this energy transition in Latin America. Latin America has an important, relevant geopolitical position, especially for the production of critical minerals. We know that we have lithium, cobalt, and the challenge here is how can we make the most of this? How can we generate disruptive development on some degree of industrialization? So now that we have this potential, and in that context, we need to do that at regional and collective level. So that was an overview of the region. What I wanted to ask you now for this second round, and based on your own experience, tell us, what's your opinion, or which do you think are important areas to develop for the benefit of the region, working together with other agencies, since most of you are here?
Thanks very much.
Muchas gracias. Nosotros hemos visto el análisis de Centroamérica, también hemos hecho análisis para América del Sur. Vamos a mostrarle algunas de estas cosas mañana. Hemos visto grandes oportunidades para Sudamérica, sobre todo la parte de electrificación, empezando con el transporte y también el uso directo de energía renovable como la térmica, combustibles biológicos, etcétera, y vemos grandes oportunidades porque la región tiene grandes fuentes de energía natural y se puede escalar. Entonces, Irena ha estado trabajando de cerca con los diferentes países de la IEA y nosotros hemos visto los detalles del análisis de la semana pasada, también las energías renovables para 2030 y también todo lo que tiene que ver con los suelos del país. Y eso tiene que ver, y es casi 3 veces más de lo que estaba previsto. Y nosotros junto con la IEO y la IEA y la presidencia de COP, la Unión Europea y todos los entes de esta región, Chile y Barbados, también vamos a firmar este acuerdo el 2 de diciembre en Dubái. Entonces, muchos de ustedes ya habrán recibido esta invitación diplomática de Estados Unidos, del Emiratos Árabes o de nosotros, y nosotros pensamos que este triple esfuerzo es importante en cuanto a la eficiencia. Vamos a regresar a la región. Vamos a crear cada vez más recursos y nosotros estimamos que esto va a traer 3.000 millones de dólares en cuanto a el beneficio. Y nosotros también pensamos que esto va a beneficiar el almacenamiento de energía y eso va a ser una parte vital para la región. Y tenemos que evolucionar. No solamente estamos hablando del alto voltaje, sino también de las redes de carga. La interconexión regional es importante también porque tenemos infraestructuras ya existentes, interconexiones físicas, pero la idea es tener un mercado común y tenemos el ejemplo de Europa, tenemos ese mercado común y una unión monetaria y eso está funcionando muy bien y también hay en otras partes del mundo esta situación. Cada semana hay un nuevo estudio sobre la conexión de la integración más reciente, pero no pasa mucho porque realmente no hay motivación real, no hay mercado real y nosotros hemos visto que hay algunos países que están invirtiendo entre dos países para colocar cables y crear conexiones. Otro punto que es importante es que no solamente tiene que ver sobre interconexión eléctrica, sino que tenemos que considerar el hidrógeno verde y el amoníaco verde. Tenemos que colocar los conexiones submarinas y subterráneas. Y una cosa importante en cuanto a hidrógeno verde es que en IRENA hemos visto el hidrógeno verde como algo más nacional, más doméstico, no algo que tanto se tiene que exportar a nivel global. Y lo decimos porque vemos a muchos países, incluyendo algunos de de esta región, donde se ve la exploración de otros usos del hidrógeno verde. Creo que esto hay que revisarlo para algunas industrias que lo pueden usar como fertilizantes y industrias pesadas, navegación, pero bueno, no está todo cubierto. Eso va a depender y hay que ver los mecanismos. Entonces, sí está bueno el hidrógeno verde, pero si hay necesidad all of how can we also work in the sector? And it's fascinating for me that nowadays in 2023, we are finally right now in the sector so we can open the sector for more women, so we can have more balance. It's not so easy yet. And I believe that in the bank there is a priority to bridge this gap in gender so it's more equal, because at the end of the day this is something that relates to equality and productivity, and I believe that bank has a very important mandate in this. And I would like to thank you because this has been able to be part of the main message from the Atomic Energy Organization. We wanted to especially talk about how can we help the region, the countries of the region, to diversify their energy mixes and how to plan this in a proper way, and also bringing to the table what the organization is doing together with other partners and everything we have done in the region. And that is why we believe it's key to have these discussions and work together, have solid partnerships, and at the same time be transparent regarding information, and also sharing that information on what has been done in every country. So when each of our organizations also comes and assists us, this assistance ends up being something coordinated, because the reality is we need to maximize our resources that are scarce, and the more coordinated we are in the region, the better it's going to be the output. We have examples with OLADE, with our colleagues of IEA, and some other examples of coordinated assistance is the work that OLADE is doing with Irene in Africa for the modeling of the African Continental Master Plan. And this is a great example to see, because we are working together. And also, last year in COP27, our General Director launched the Atom for Net Zero initiative, and the main goal is to give to the member states assistance regarding energy planning. And this is a multi-stakeholder initiative. That means that we are going to be working for our state members together with some other organizations. So in that sense, we can work in a coordinated way. So thank you very much for this opportunity and for including the organization in this discussion and in the Energy Week. This is a great opportunity for us. Thank you very much. I would like to continue by thanking all of the organizations that are represented here, and also those who are not here today with us, because of the fundamental role that you have, that you play. Andres, you defined the OLADE role, and I think that also can be applied to other agencies. And this is supportive for countries in public policies. I believe that no country in the world could do or could decide and adopt policies without the essential support of all of the agencies and everything that you're doing. Second of all, I like to be in this panel. It's very friendly. I believe that we all know that we need to have an energy transition, and we also have scientific evidence that we need to make this faster. We are way far from 1.5, the Paris goal objective. You maybe read the report where it says that if we comply, if all countries have the national contributions, the national determined contributions, then we will still be 2.7 or 3 degrees away, far away from the Paris goal. So we believe this is something at world level, and as we said before, every country does what they can and what is easiest. The Paris Agreement doesn't say what has to be done, how it has to be done. Every country needs to do how they think is fit. It's true that natural gas and natural union believes this is transition energy, and I would like to explain this to you. A couple of years ago, we have had this security issue regarding supply with the invasion of Ukraine. This was done by Russia. There was a political commitment to replace all of the Russian gas that the European Union imported. We consume around 400 billion cubic gases of gas, and we would export most of them from Russia. It was a great percentage, actually. The idea was to replace that in 7 years. We have done this quite slowly, but either way, in 1 year, we advanced a lot. It meant 40% before, and now it's only 8%. We have done this by bringing natural gas from other countries, but at the same time, this has been very fast regarding the energy transition. Last year, the European Union increased more than 60 gigas the consumption and production of natural resources within the European Union. And in that sense, I believe it's important to highlight, and I would like to say as well what Irene has mentioned. We in the European Union, since we don't have production of natural fossil fuel, we cannot have an energy mix based on that in the future. So we have two policies. We have this idea of being efficient. That is the most important thing. And both go together, hand in hand. For us, it's important to have this. This is paired with the policies that can also help us to reach the decarbonization in the most affordable way, also contributing to the employment and a better economy. To do so, we need to have an interconnected market. The European Union is not interconnected yet, but the world goal should be having an interconnected market. But the idea is to have hydro pipes to be able to send green hydrogen. This is yet to be done. The European Union, in this sense, needs the cooperation at international level, and we need the support of the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. We have also mentioned oftentimes the critical minerals. We in the European Union do not have that either. Those that are needed to go forward with the transition of the energy, mostly regarding the storage of the renewable energy, and that is the reason why we need to cooperate with Latin America. And this is also important not only because we need to have these raw materials, but also because of technologies, this know-how. We need to intensify the cooperation at stakeholder levels and at government level. In this sense, we also have a term that is important, that is investment. How much money do we need in the European Union, in Africa, and in Latin America to do this energy transition? I cannot mention the figure that the European Union needs, because it seems to be something impossible. I think it's very complicated to do so. But either way, I am here with Natalia. She works in the European Commission. She works in the General Direction of International Partnership, and we have an initiative called Global Gateway. And we also have, with European Union, we have the European team.
More than 45 billion euros that could be used for the Latin American and the Caribbean area. And a significant percentage of that would be used for energy transition projects. So to sum up, I think that we are all on board of the same ship. I think that we all agree on this energy transition, and we will implement it with the technology that we deem appropriate. But the thing is that we need to increase cooperation, and also this kind of international forum where we can share our experiences in energy transition so that we can achieve it in a quicker way. I wanted to start with a point that was mentioned about the economic growth in the region. We are not growing. That is the truth about it. Or we are growing very, very little. So that demand of energy is not growing. So when we insist on how to fund all this, it's important about the amount of economic resources that we need. But in some cases, we don't even have the projects for funding because we don't have the demand. And I think that is something important to take into account to understand Latin America, because we are not growing. And this is not only about the energy sector, it's about the economy as a whole. And the economy is the one that pushes everything forward. So I think that is a key point to take into account. Something else that I wanted to mention. And apart from what CAF does, we as a multilateral agency, we all have similar aspects. We work on integration, we work on renewable energies, we are all dealing with electromobility in different degrees. But apart from that, there are other topics. For instance, we talk about the legal framework and the regulatory framework that should be stable. But we also need some flexibility to add technologies such as the battery, for instance. But who is in charge of that? That is a high technical level, and those are not present. There are some in some countries, but not in all of them, and there's room for improvement. I live in Panama, and we're going through a very difficult situation. That is basically about this, the lack of trust in the economy, how to do with critical minerals and these new lines of transmission. But they cannot go out, they cannot leave their houses because you have social conflicts in some areas. La Guajira, for instance, was not able to move one electron out of the wind farm. In Panama, we have a huge problem with copper mines. And this will happen once and once again, and also in other places. So we, as multilateral agencies, we have a role to play there. Something else is that we ask ourselves, when it comes to technology, are we using high-end technology? And what about the implications this has, especially for the cost of those countries that have significant restrictions? So to purchase this kind of technology is very difficult for these countries. The story we always share is basically VHS and Betamax when we talk about dissemination. You have to explain those terms to the young people here in the room. As a multilateral agency, we have the possibility of working, for instance, in hydrocarbons or gas. We have been providing funding in the case of Argentina, works connected to Nestor Kirchner in Lima, El Callao. We have provided financing the last mile for gas works, and the differences in impact. In the case of Argentina, there's a huge impact on its economy because it helps them with their payment balance. But in the case of Lima, we are replacing stoves. We're replacing those with stoves that use wood with gas. So the national oil companies are very, very important in these countries, especially for their fiscal issues. How are we going to work with this? How are we going to provide support to these companies? Because they also need to go through that transition. We have national oil and gas companies that have an impact, and they have an approach in which they are the ones involved in those transitions. In the case of Brazil, they are the catalyzing agents. For instance, in Brazil, Petrobras announced that they were installing 23 gigabytes of offshore energy. And they will combine that with hydrogen production, and they will include everything in their processes. So how can we help those national oil companies? On Thursday, we have an announcement. I won't talk about that. You will do that. Regional integration. But regional integration is now more important because it helps us balance these systems in which we are adding intermittent energy. So it's fundamental. And there's another point of integration. And when we think about gas integration, there's always one component missing, and that is the financial component. How to transform financial instruments that can go along that purchase process of energy. For instance, Mexico and the US, they have a lot to teach us. And lastly, energy efficiency, not only from the offer side, but also on the demand side. And there we have a lot to learn, a lot to do. Our energies have grown in most cases without following any patterns in a chaotic way. We think about electromobility, but it's not just about replacing buses using internal combustion for buses using gas. Energy efficiency should be considered even when you are thinking about the design of a city. These are very important topics, and we're all working on those topics. So we're talking about traffic jams or bottleneck. That is one of the terms that we use, but they use a special variety of Spanish. They are translating that into Spanish for other regions. We still have 20 minutes.
O que vemos claramente.
What we see here, we need to find to complement the work by different agencies. We have OLADE and CIER. They can work and they complement each other. OLADE is in charge of working with ministries and countries. CIER works with companies. So we play that role of working with private and public companies. Then when it comes to integration, we talk about integration is becoming more and more important. Apart from working together for energy, we can complement each other when it comes to times. For instance, we have a 2-hour difference between Brazil and Peru. So the systems are not at the same time, and by doing that, we can have that integration and use energy from one country to the other so that we can use these. We can make the most of this difference in times. So if you invest a lot of money just for 1 hour, one peak hour, that's a lot of. If we have a clear complementarity with time differences, and not only about energy, but also using energy and time differences. Natalia mentioned distribution. We have a saying here that says, without transmission, there's no transition. I tend to say that without grids, you don't have any transition. It's not only transmission, but also internal networks and grids. Energy distribution, there are different places, especially in those areas that can use solar energy. For instance, in the northeast of the country, where there's no more place for solar panels because you have no way of getting that energy out of that region. The grids are saturated. So that is something that we need to work on, that last mile, how distribution agency will work on that last mile, and that is something that we are working in the organization with different distribution companies to try to improve this energy efficiency and planning distribution. At macro level, when we think about energy planning, we have a group of system planners whose objective is to assess and make progress for regional planning. Today, each country has its own planning without looking to the neighbors. But we need to think about an integral regional plan so that we can optimize resources. Because as most of you said, we don't have infinite resources. Energy integration should be planned for the next 15, 20 years, like Ecuador, Peru, Panama. This represents $6 billion only about those things planned for the next years, and that's a lot of money. We need to find those points so that we can reach a more integrated regional planning. And for that, we need to work together, OLADE and CIER, with the companies and governments that are in charge of planning. And also to continue working in energy efficiency, something that we have talked a lot. For many, many years, I was in charge of one area of energy efficiency in Brazil, and I like to say that efficiency is not about saving energy. Efficiency is to make each unit of megawatt hour can generate a unit of GDP that is more productive. In Latin America, in this case, we produce $4,000 of GDP. The idea would make progress in that, and 1 watt hour to produce $6,000, $7,000 of GDP. I'm an engineer. In those times, when we think about distribution plannings for each 1% of GDP, we are planning 1.8% of growth in the electric system. Today, we are thinking about 1% growth of GDP, 1.3, 1.4 in Latin America. But in some countries, like in Japan, for example, it's 0.9. For 1% of GDP, you make progress in 0.9% in the electricity energy system. And also the intensity of energy. Try to find this efficiency when it comes to the implementation of the use of electric energy. We are working with a group of operators of the system. We have a group that aims to reach exchanges so that we can have a regional operation and a group of planners to try to achieve those results. And as my colleague from IDB said, gender is fundamental, because I'm asking for gender equity in Sierra, because I work with 2 men and 9 women. So I would like to have some gender equity, you know? Just a joke. But we have some companies that are doing very, very good job. We have a company that developed a project, a training project for women. They started giving jobs to women at the base of the foundation, and then they provided training for them to continue studying, to finish their high school studies, for them to take engineering courses so that they can improve their skills. On some assessments that we have implemented in Sierra, in management levels, we only have 17% of women. And in the workforce, 25–30% of women in the energy sector. So we need to increase those numbers. We need to provide training. And this example that I gave you of these companies, we are replicating that for all the associated companies to share to those and some others that we have within a project that is called the Bank of Best Practices. And I would like to say that to all the agencies, we can share all the knowledge that we have. We are interested in making progress together and trying to do exactly that, make progress together. Thank you.
I also wanted to share a little bit with you because I need to leave. 2 things regarding what you were saying on terms of investment. It is true that we are not growing much in the world, especially in Latin America, as a consequence of the crises we are going through right now. But actually, what ECLAC is saying is to grow and repair through investments in renewable energies and other areas such as digitalization, specific health issues, and so on. We have a proposal in the ECLAC website. We prioritize sectors in the development sector. And the first one is the energy transition. Not because of its importance, but it's always the first one. It is not the same when we get the resources, when we need to operate and work. But why do we say this? We had a panel, I recommend this to you. It's recorded, it's going to be uploaded regarding all of the aspects, how the energy transition should be accelerated, how to invest in that, including efficiency, because we included equity, access, and everything, resilience and integration as well. This allows us to advance in the development that is sustainable, and it's going to be fair as well. We have all of the figures, and as Ariel Yepes from IDB said in our panel, the truth is that from the whole investment that is related to this potential growth of electrification that we're going to go through, we don't know exactly when, but this comes through the creation and the potential of electricity, electrification, and universal access to those who do not have yet this utility. Also through the electrification of light industry, and that is how we calculate this gap. We are working on this analysis together with the IDB to see how much we have this lack of infrastructure. It's not only infrastructure in generation, but also in the grids, in the transmission, distribution, and so on. It comes to be the calculation, in the basic calculation says that we have 3% that is being covered basically by the IDB. Specifically, it's very low. I don't know how much CAF contributes to this infrastructure. I cannot tell you any figure. We have to talk about this, but 30% is financed by the governments of the region, and 60% in the renewable energies is covered by the private sector. Even if we grow, we do not have money in the government, in the states, at central or regional level, given the problems at tax level, and that is why the national funds are low, to be able to invest and fund all of the infrastructure we need as a region. But the private sector and all of the fintech companies and their own engineering and resources to work with the strategic minerals and to create electrolyzers, solutions for batteries, and everything that the colleague from the IDB said. It's not in the region yet, but it's going to be there, because the idea is to grab all of this added value, and industrialize everything so we can apply this to the energy sector in the transition to the welfare and the well-being of the sector. How much do we need? We need to calculate in the model. We calculated 1.3% of the GDP for 10 years in a row. That is not so much. It generates almost 100% of universal access to electricity in 10 years, with 80% of renewable energy. Right now we have 59. It creates 7 million of green employment positions, and also we hope it's going to be gender equal, and it decreases the emissions of carbon in 30%. We have the literature there if you want to see it. We are updating the model right now. We still need to keep on working, but we have some metrics that might be useful for the region. In most more advanced countries like Chile and Uruguay need to invest less. Some countries that are still working with gas and so other fuels need to invest more than 1.3% of GDP. We still have this kind of scenarios and modeling so we can see these dimensions, and we want to work with Olade Cafe and the IDB with this kind of joint studies that we can publish to show what we are working with and how the different stakeholders, the private and public sector, can organize to accelerate and put the money there. Put the money where we need to do that. Thank you. We have 10 minutes left. Well, because of the time we have left, I believe we all agree on the topics. As Cristina said, we need a lot of money, and the money we are giving, it's not enough. As Regina was saying from ECLAC, we need to leverage the private sector with money, and we need to apply our resources too, so we can create a basis for the private sector to come and collaborate with us under some conditions with a fair transition. That is what we're looking for. Since we don't have a lot to discuss on that, I'm asking how. How can we do this? That is the question. How can we coordinate this? What does coordinate mean in this context? We agree in everything we need to achieve, but we're always going to find differences. Some institutions are going to be biased on what they understand what is renewable, if nuclear is included or not because of its constitution, but we all know what we want. And how can we do this coordination? That is my question. How can we transmit this message to the country so everybody knows that we are working on the same way, in the same direction? And I believe we know our weaknesses and strengths. We all have them. It's important to transmit that and to see the coordination. I'm going to recommend something from a region. That is the coffee strategy. There's nothing to do. We don't have to get a cup of coffee together, but we can meet at coffee shops or virtual coffee shops just to discuss. But well, the coordination needs to exist. And unfortunately, we are Latinos, and that is the reason why we work like this. When we have a one-on-one relationship with people, I work in Buenos Aires, I cover Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, and I talk with my IDB colleagues, with the CAF colleagues, but everything is personal. So if I know who my colleague is and I have a good relationship with them, and I say, well, people in Uruguay and Paraguay want this or that, they're doing the same. Let's coordinate, let's not duplicate. Nobody wants to do anything that stays there inactive. It's easy to talk with people who are convinced, but nobody wants to do an effort and not doing anything out of it. Nobody wants to read reports, and so people do not read that. So we all agree, and we are mature enough right now to assume that this is a starting point. So let's try to do this. Let's not read the same report. Maybe it has the same chapter or not. No, let's not do that. Let's discuss. Let's do this cup of coffee strategy. This is a good starting point, but we cover different countries, we have different institutions, we have headquarters in different places, but let's try to stop having this personal link and let's do it more institutional. So before we start working or give answers, this is not rocket science. Let's just Google people up. Let's know who are the colleagues who are working on this. Let's have a database to know what the colleagues are and what every institution is doing. This information might be available. We might work with Olave, all of us. In the bank, we have many people who are called Lucia. We have at least 7 people with my name. But well, we agree we need to keep on working on how we do the things, because if not, this is just going to be a wish. Bueno, muchas gracias. Realmente estoy muy feliz con la discusión que tenemos. De nuevo, estoy descubriendo la gran diversidad de las situaciones en países y en situaciones. Y me acuerdo de decirles que el fundamento y la decisión, el principio del Acuerdo de París es que las contribuciones tienen que ser determinadas ahora. Tenemos las prioridades y las capacidades, y esto se puede entender debido a las preguntas legítimas en cuanto a imponer en las condiciones. Estos son los acuerdos del acuerdo. En cuanto a las tecnologías y las metas, la situación es bastante simple. Para mí, lo más importante en cuanto a la transición energética es ir de usar la biomasa a usar combustibles más limpios para cocinar. Inclusive un tercio de la población todavía usa el carbón, la leña para cocinar. Entonces, cuando regresamos a esto y lo dejamos de hacer, simplemente baja las emisiones, también baja la contaminación interna y la OMS dice que 2.3 millones de personas mueren por contaminación interna, por usar combustible sucio. Eso es más que la pandemia de COVID. Adicionalmente, todos sabemos quién va a recolectar la leña. Son las mujeres, son los niños. Entonces, para mí la mejor energía es dejar de usar la biomasa para usar LPG, y este sería para mí mi punto de vista. Eso no es muy costoso. El problema es que hay un tercio de la población que no tienen una voz en esto. No vemos esto en los diarios. La segunda cosa es que si vemos el año pasado en China, como tuvieron una sequía, entonces ellos empezaron a volver a usar el carbón. Y el año pasado ellos empezaron con el nivel récord, lo más alto. Y este año seguramente va a alcanzar más alto, un más alto nivel. Si China tuviera más gas, entonces no habrían usado el carbón. Entonces el gas es muy importante para la estabilidad y todo el respaldo del sistema de redes. Ustedes ya saben sobre eso, pero también la parte de hidrógeno en cuanto al periodo de sequía. Entonces creo que deberíamos dejar de invertir en gas natural, en una industria donde tienes cada año una baja de 5 a 6% de la oferta y la demanda. Hay que seguir trabajando para poder tener un balance de oferta y demanda, y tenemos una gran volatilidad con los efectos negativos en los países en vías de desarrollo. Me encontré con el ministro de Energía de Pakistán hace 3 meses y me dijo que el año pasado ellos estaban fuera del mercado por los gran precios. Todo esto iba a Europa, no a Pakistán. Y tuvieron que regresar a usar el carbón. Y nosotros cambiamos nuestra energía, me dijo. Hay esta energía y en América Latina y el Caribe se puede ver esto. La emisión es 3% de la emisión global. Si ustedes ven esta, además de esa, la región ofrece uno de los más grandes registros de carbono por sus grandes bosques. Y no creo que esa región es responsable del cambio climático. Pues creo que la prioridad es la erradicación del desarrollo económico. Sí, tenemos que hacer todo lo que sea posible para proteger el gobierno, pero inclusive nosotros en el UNFCCC, que la erradicación del poder y el desarrollo socioeconómico son la prioridad más grande de los países en vías de desarrollo. Y eso también es importante decirlo en esta región. En cuanto a la colaboración, creo que tenemos que colaborar en cuanto a la cocina, no usar biomasa, sino LPG, y creo que la integración regional y el desarrollo de gas es muy importante. Esta región tiene mucho gas, pero algunos países tienen muchos recursos y otros países tienen mercados crecientes, entonces hay que unirlos entre esos países productores y consumidores. Eso es muy importante. Es mucho más barato desarrollar gas en la región y venderlos que traer gas cuando hay que desarrollarlo, licuarlo, etcétera. Eso no es económicamente mejor, ni tampoco ambientalmente mejor. Un ejemplo importante en cuanto al potencial de la integración regional es el acuerdo entre Venezuela y Trinidad y Tobago. Ellos compraron el gas en Venezuela a pesar de que Trinidad y Tobago tiene la capacidad de licuado, de licuefacción. Hay muchas otras posibilidades. También hay otra área donde nosotros podríamos trabajar juntos, que es la energía para el poder. Las energías renovables son importantes en las regiones y también van a crecer, pero tiene que ver con la estabilidad y el respaldo de estos poderes. Esta situación en grandes ciudades costeras podrían ser una buena manera de ofrecer la flexibilidad que son totalmente necesarios si el país depende del país y el país depende de la variabilidad, disculpen. Además de colocar el intercambio de datos y la participación. De nuevo, gracias por la invitación que nos hicieron para este evento y muchas felicidades porque ustedes tienen un panel donde hay una mayoría de mujeres. Thank you. Do you want to add something? Just a couple of minutes. I wanted to tell what she was saying regarding gas. The countries should look for energy mixes. Gas is not infinite. And with the invasion of Russia, the countries also need to invest in products that in their countries generate energy without depending on other markets. And that is a great example of that. Here in Uruguay, we import gas from Argentina, and it's happening the same. In Uruguay, it's very expensive because we do not produce it. And we have other energy mixes that are being used in Uruguay that are compensating. And we also have an agreement in the electric part with Brazil and Argentina, and also through the dam in the Uruguay River. And we share energy in both sides because of needs. And this helps the economies of both countries when we are in needs. The idea is that we are not exceeding, and then they don't need that the other country gives them energy. So sometimes there is an excess of energy that we don't know how to use in a profitable way. Regarding mobility, we are not developed in Uruguay because the regulating entity that works with this is called UTE, but there are no companies that are fostering the electric system for chargers or routes. Some companies are beginning with that, but they're not experts, but they are not empowered. They don't know the technology well to use them. Sometimes we see that at a government level, but at a lower level. And sometimes they don't actually know what's going on. They don't have access to information, and sometimes the information doesn't arrive quite as clear. For example, in electric mobility, we have not so many companies that are developing this, but there are no trainings going on. So we lack the knowledge. This needs to be homogenized so the technicians can answer to this advance. And this advance also goes hand in hand with the lowest levels, because sometimes we have an investment, and if the country doesn't have a need, we need to think about what is the need of the normal person. How can we stimulate the person? Because people might need that, so that the consumers might also do so. We need to create a good portfolio, whatever that is renewable, that is not something that is going to end, so that the population doesn't say, well, I have gas now, and in 2 months I'm not going to have anything. I have to change the energy mix, because this is going to be the end of it. And we need to do the best so the companies look forward to having funding in renewable products that are not going to end. Thank you for your final contribution.
Muy sinceramente les agradezco a todos.
So thank you very much to all of you for being here. I think we have some shared objectives. So just one last comment when wrapping up. When it comes to the how, I think that is a very important factor. I think that the base for that is to share information, to get to know each other, something that we have done so far. And then from that moment on, to share some coffee together. Tulio, we need to leave this place right now. Sorry, there's no mic. We need the mic. Okay, we may have some other conversation in some time.
Creo que tiene sentido y es útil para todos. Muchas gracias.